Let's try hitting the red button and see what happens.
Hello?
It's recording.
Okay. Are you going to do most of the talking?
Are you going to do most of the talking?
I don't know.
Sure.
I'll figure out who
I feel like this is your
It is, yeah.
and your face is on the top. We can probably help. Okay. Sorry for the delay. You're in the right place, I think. Even I got confused, but we're running behind due to room issues and technical issues. But we're talking about theming the new theme layer in Drupal 8. So if you want to hear about that, great. And my name is Carl, and I'm here with, shall I let everybody introduce themselves? Okay. I'm Carl, C4RL and Drupal.org. I've worked with Drupal about 4 years, and need to plug in my laptop, probably. And I'm a themer developer trainer, and have recently just got into working on some core, which is nothing that I had done recently because we were, I think, collectively irritated with the state of theming in Drupal 7. And hopefully you are also maybe irritated with the state of theming in Drupal 7, or maybe you're curious about, someone's not. I'm going to say no, okay.
Who was that?
Yeah. Who was that? You're in the wrong section. Okay. So or you just want to learn more about what's happening in Drupal 8. Very exciting moment this morning when we actually saw Dries commit the Twig patch, which is a huge step forward for theming and something that we've been waiting for a long time. We're going to talk about the back history of that and all that stuff. So that's me, and I'll let other people introduce themselves.
Hey, I'm not angry anymore. It's really strange. I will be angry by tomorrow afternoon if nobody shows up and helps me with all of the template files we now need to make beautiful and wonderful to work with.
I'm this guy. I've actually been complaining about Drupal 7 theming for the longest.
For 2.5 years.
No, it's been 3 years. DrupalCon San Francisco, 2009 is when I first said Drupal 7 theming layer is a bit too complex.
That was 2000, it's only 2.5
That was 2010?
Yeah.
Seems like yesterday.
Right now. That's me.
I'm the next one. I'm Lampton. You probably know anyway now. Right. Oh wait, we skipped Alex too. And then, we have a couple people who aren't here. Maybe just one. Kris is busy writing code, which is to be expected. And then we have some people who I forgot on the slide. This is Kris.
You didn't know this. Jax didn't know the session was on IRC.
Oh, well, that's okay. He might join us later, maybe.
Probably not.
We'll see.
He was only there for 30 minutes in Munich. So. I'm Kris Vanderwater from Eclipse GC. I was apparently forgotten, and that's okay. I'm the Drupal 8 initiative owner for blocks and layouts, and that has primarily been my role here, making sure that we all play nice together.
Oh yeah, and the Drupal 8 mobile initiative lead.
Yeah.
Alex is Octo.
All right.
He helps all of us out.
Do you want to steer?
Okay, I shall advance the slides.
Okay, so now that you know who all we are, we just kind of wanted to get a feel for who came to this session. So how many of you are themers or front-end developers? Okay. How many of you have built themes for Drupal 7? Okay, of that group, how many of you also built themes for Drupal 6? And anyone for Drupal 5?
No.
Pretty good.
4.7?
Okay,
4.7? 4.6?
Drupal 3.
That's enough, that's enough. Okay, so for those of you who are not front-end developers, how many of you are back-end engineers just want to figure out what the heck you're going to have to deal with in Drupal 8? That's like everyone else. Okay, that's great.
No project managers? Good.
Of course not. Why would
Front row.
Oh, all
There's
right.
one. Where?
Two.
Can you help me with coffee? This is an insult I have to do to project managers every time. It's just a thing I have.
Okay, so how many of you consider the front-end developers, consider yourself experts in HTML and CSS? And then of those people, do you also know PHP code? Okay, have you used other templating languages? Did you have to learn the PHP code you know now only to work with Drupal?
How many people learn PHP because of Drupal? Yeah. Cool.
That's like half the developers too.
Everybody.
This
All right, you're in the right
explains
place.
so much.
Yeah.
All right, okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's now going to be the new theme layer in Drupal 8 and why we arrived at it and how it's going to solve most of our problems.
All of our problems.
All of our problems.
Yeah, I tried to sell it as all. Everything would be good now.
So we're going to start by looking back at Drupal 7. We added a lot of really great stuff in Drupal 7. Basically, you can do whatever you want. You can put anything you want, anywhere you want to do it, and achieve that goal as long as you know exactly how to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit about why that isn't always so easy.
So those are the positive things.
Yay!
Now there's a few negative things.
So the theme layer in Drupal 7 used to be, it's based on PHPTemplate, but it's not PHPTemplate as of Drupal 7. We've kind of turned it into something that only exists in Drupal. This is what we call Drupalism, and you can't find it anywhere else on the internet, which is frustrating. When variables are referenced in template files, sometimes they're referenced with a little minus sign and like a gradient symbol indicates an arrow, and sometimes with a square bracket and a quote. And those mean things in PHP. One means it's an object, one means it's an array. But to someone who doesn't know PHP and just wants to work in a template, it's really confusing knowing when you need to use one and when you need to use the other. When you actually want to print these variables out, sometimes you just print them. You say, hey, print classes. And sometimes you have to print render them. And that can also be really confusing because you're like, well, when do I do what? And are there rules? And if you don't understand all of the craziness of Drupal around when to do that, that can also be frustrating. PHP itself is really insecure. So if you have these template files that are meant for people who are HTML and CSS experts and they can do things, maybe accidentally, maybe on purpose, that can destroy your Drupal website, that's probably not a good thing. And when I was creating that slide, I accidentally dropped the node table on my database. I thought it was good. Drupal workers do that, in case you're wondering. Completely. Right. There's also too much stuff going on in Drupal. Just in core alone, we have this many template files. So if you're someone who really cares about the quality of your HTML and you want to replace all of the HTML on your Drupal site with better HTML, you have a lot of work to do to figure out where it came from and get it into good shape. And you can't really see it.
That list looks too short to me.
Yeah.
It's supposed to.
We couldn't fit it all on the
that font
screen.
looks too big to me.
The list of
Right.
theme functions is actually about 3 times bigger than this.
So that was template files. This is theme functions.
Okay.
There's also 2 different kinds of things. We'll talk about that later. But theme functions in core is other places where your markup comes from. There's 3 times as many as will fit on here. I think there's 4 times as many as there are template files. There's just too many places in core where this code is coming from. Has anyone ever actually tried to figure out like the linear progression of where all of your markup gets generated? Did you end up with a diagram that looks like this? Because there's so many different systems that are like, oh, I'm going to pull stuff here. I know it's been changed over there, and then no, we're going to pass it over here, but I want it back. And then you're like, I can't figure out where the stuff is coming from and how I can actually change it. And there's a reason that no one understands the theme layer in Drupal 7. It's because this is even simplified.
This is the simplified
Right.
version.
A bunch of, so it's pretty nice.
So here, it's over here, variable this way. To modify those, run over here, come back this way, and actually I don't know where it all comes out.
You didn't put that on here.
Yeah.
It's hard to have it work in Drupal, he doesn't know how the code gets out of that.
So no one
Here and here.
No one
That's obvious.
no one sat down and designed this. No one said this is how we should render markup from Drupal. This came about after many years of one system being bolted onto another thing, being bolted onto another thing, being bolted onto another thing. And then after many years, you have this big kind of pile of bolts. You're like, well, I don't really know what this machine does anymore. And this was not just frustration expressed by people who were new to Drupal, but even us who worked in Drupal every day. And we're like, how do I even approach, there were days when I would be working on a project and I would spend my whole afternoon just like repping around trying to figure out where something came from. Because there was so many alters.
Just 2 or 3 process.
Yeah, well, just there were just too many things. And this was the result of that.
We got this a lot from students in classes. It's like, what?
Yeah, and so Jen and I really started thinking about this when we were giving a training a few years ago, and trying to train people on how to like render a menu in a template. And it was like some of these people had never seen PHP before, and we had this theme, that took an argument from another callback that was messy. And so these were the problems that we had.
So
and it's a lot of stuff.
Everything we just went over, we put them into a list of these are the big things that we struggle with. There's probably a lot more stuff, but this is what we're trying to solve in Drupal.
And so we're going to talk about each of these things and how we hope, and we feel strongly positive, that what you just witnessed this morning will hopefully solve
most of this.
Most of this, if not all of this. More than
With your help.
with your help. And you can help. Yeah, we'll talk about that too.
All right. We're
Drupal 8.
We're in Drupal 8. We can't do anything about Drupal 7 just yet. But in Drupal 8, we are introducing a new template engine called Twig. Twig has been a template engine before it went into Drupal, which is good. There are people out there who are already using it. So there are a very small number of people who might be like, oh, I know Twig, therefore I can work in Drupal. But better than that, it's also really clear and easy to understand. So if you don't know Twig, you can still use it, which is great. It's really extensible, which is great for us because Drupal has actually solved a lot of problems in terms of generating markup that maybe Twig hasn't. But when we get to something that we've solved and they haven't, we can just write an extension to make Twig do what Drupal would normally do anyway. So it will work with all of our existing systems, which is really good. It's secure. So you can't run the DB query function from a Twig template because we aren't going to allow that to happen. Which will be good. So that means people who don't know any better won't be able to break their site by accident, and people who do know better will have to try a lot harder in order to do something naughty. It also has 2 different modes where if you are allowing unsafe content, it can run in a sandbox mode and it will be extra difficult to post it. Twig is also really well tested, so it has its own unit testing, and since it's already in existence in the wild, there are people using it and proving that it will do what we want to, which is good. It's also fairly fast, at least compared to other template engines out there. So this is a map showing PHP, Smarty, and Twig. I can't read what that rain template.
Rain.
Yeah. And as far as template engines go, it's actually fairly sophisticated, which is great. It has a bunch of integration with IDEs, which is good. It means it has like syntax highlighting and anyone who is a hardcore developer and you want to be able to like check for stuff, you probably already have an IDE and you haven't been able to get work with PHPTemplate maybe. But now it'll be able to say like, oh, this big stuff needs to fall on, which is good. And it has a syntax that's inherently recognizable. There's a whole bunch of other languages on the web that people might have been using before, where when they open a Twig template, they'll say, oh, I recognize this syntax, and they'll be able to understand it without needing to go and read a bunch of documentation as to how it actually works, which is great. It's also written by the guy who wrote Symfony and works well with Symfony, which is also already in core. So we have a lot of smart things that working together in Drupal, which is really great too. So you guys want to see what it looks like?
Yes.
Yay.
All right, so this is an example. I'm not sure how well you can see the contrast there. So this is an example of our item list template. This is actually a simplified example.
There you go.
But when you want to print a variable in Twig, you print it with double curly Q's on either side. So there's no word print, there's no PHP brackets. It's just curly Q, value. If you want to run an if statement or a for statement or any kind of logic, you use a command in a curly Q % symbol. So around your markup, you can see there's just regular markup in here. Ooh, good text, right? You just put these little curly Q things in, and that'll say, okay, this is code versus Twig code versus HTML code.
I like that comment.
And if you have a comment in your template file, you do it with a curly Q and a pound sign. We are going to be improving all of the markup in all of these template files as we're going through them, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So some of the stuff that's already committed has little notes that are like, hey, there's too many div tags in core. Pause for that. Remove them. All right. So in general, this is a really complicated example of a template file. We've got some simpler ones that you'll recognize. But for the most part, you can kind of read it. And I was actually really against Twig when we first started talking about how to fix the theme system. I'm like, why are we introducing something new? Everyone already knows PHP. Let's just make it better, right? But when I started working with Twig, I realized that I didn't actually have to learn very much that was new, because you can look at it and read it. Like, if title is defined, that's a sentence. Right? Is that really that? I don't know. It just seemed like, oh, what am I so worried about? So all theme functions in Drupal right now will become template files in Twig. So this means that if you need to override some markup, you don't need to figure out, is it coming from a template file or a theme function? You know it's a template file, and you can go and find it very easily. This is an example of the theme username function and how it will become a template file called username.html.twig in Drupal 8. So something before that was a fairly long function that has like strings sticking together and function whatever, just becomes an anchor tag. Whoa. People who like HTML want to have HTML, so here we're going to give it to you. This is the theme image function. Look, it's an image tag. Getting better. And theme link, again, is an anchor tag. We haven't quite figured out the exact syntax for dealing with stuff like attributes, and you can see there's some functions in here, right, that we passed in from Drupal. There's still some like to be determined on how complicated we want to make things in the template files and how much we want to do before stuff gets to the template files. And we need input from front-end experts on that. So I'm not qualified to make those decisions. Tomorrow, Morten's going to be running a sprint we'll talk more about later where you can help pitch in on some.
And we actually don't have to write code. We need to discuss what it is that we want.
Tell us what you want.
We did a code sprint in Munich. I was standing up for 10 hours and discussing code. I did not even write a single line.
Yeah, and we made a lot of progress.
And that's kind of what we need to do now. We need to figure out what is it that we want. I mean, as a wish list, it's going to be Christmas, and I want to have a pony and a unicorn, and you know, those kind of things. And then we're going to figure out if smart people can make it happen.
Yeah.
This is my favorite.
So the theme item list function in core right now is quite long, right? It turns out when you're using PHP to create HTML, it takes a lot more lines of code than if you had just written the HTML. So now that we're turning it back into its original source, where we can put the HTML with a little bit of quick fun in there, it ends up being a lot cleaner.
All right, so here's all the problems we had in Drupal 7. This is remember how we had our list of benefits, which was kind of short, and then our list of negative things? These are all the negative things we talked about. We're going to go through each one of these and explain how, hopefully, they're fixed. Okay, number one.
All right, so we talked about how Twig is used elsewhere. It also is mostly HTML. It looks like HTML, reads like English. People are just going to get it, which is great. The template variables are always accessed the same way. So if it's a node NID, which is an object, you get to it in Twig by doing node.nid. Or if it's content square bracket links, which is an array, you're going to get to it in Twig by content.links. So it doesn't matter what kind of object you're dealing with. You just do something dot something else dot something else dot whatever, and it's always going to print as a string, which will be great. So you don't need to know how to do it. You just do what you think is right, and guess what? You're right. So the problem was print, render, and render. We removed the function render from all template files in Twig. So anytime anything's printed in Twig, you can print it exactly like you expect to node.link, node.nid, content.links. And if that thing needs to be rendered, Twig will render it for you. So you don't need to know about it. It'll just do it automatically. So we talked again about how we're not going to let you run a DB query function from a template file. There's an additional benefit here where all of those variables that you're printing, the node.nid or the content.links, are also automatically escaped. So all of your data is safe. No matter what you want to get, you can reach right into a node, and when you go to print it in your template file, Twig will sanitize that for you and make sure that nothing malicious is getting out on the page. So a huge complaint from the security team is that 100% of all themes are insecure with a little rounding error. And part of the problem is that you never know when you need to sanitize something and when you don't. And so what we're looking at in Drupal-8, if you're using Twig, everything will always be sanitized for you. You won't need to think about it anymore. Just print what you want where you want it, and Drupal will handle the rest. So 2 ways to override your markup: theme functions, template files are going to be gone. All theme functions we're converting to template files. We're actually most of the way through that now, but if you want to help us, there's a couple more issues you can work on tomorrow. But basically things like theme table become table.html.twig, and something like node.tpl becomes node.html.twig. So everything is template file, which is great. We also have this issue now where even though we have way too much stuff in core, most of it does the same thing. We've got like 13 functions that output a link, and I don't know, 5 that output an item list, 4 or 5 that output a table. It's the same exact HTML structure. I don't know why we need 4 different theme functions to print the same
Because it's
HTML.
Drupal and it's unique.
The table is a table. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a wholesale review. We've got lists of all of these things that are the same. And we're going to do a whole review of everything and try and figure out what are the patterns that Drupal actually uses. And we'll have one template file, like table, for every time we need to print a table. And some of you, especially developers, are probably like, but what if I only need to override one table, right? Well, we're going to give you theme hook suggestions for all of the things that you have now. So if you need to override one type of table, you can have it. You can have the, table -- whatever .html.twig that'll override only that one. But by default, we're only going to give you the one file. So Drupal will only render it from one place until you override it. It's not going to be automatically assuming that that table needs to be different. So again, we've still got some decisions to make about what the best starting points for all of ours, which is where we need your input tomorrow. But we are going to be cleaning everything up, which will be great. So we also have this crazy complex mix of subsystems. Removing theme functions and theme function overrides from that mix is good, but we'll also have some more abilities to clean stuff up. Right now we are using process functions to do things like take arrays and flatten them into strings, and for some reason, some places Drupal adds new things in the process layer. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to get rid of the entire process layer because Twig can handle rendering complex things like arrays into strings for you, and we're going to make sure all of the stuff that gets added is going to be there when you're actually looking at the thing you want to print earlier than whenever process is doing it now. So we're going to completely kill that layer, which would be great. And we also are planning to remove render. So right now we're leaving it in core because we've got to not break Drupal. So we're removing the calls to render from different places, but we're eventually going to be replacing all of these giant renderable arrays with objects that are basically the same, and they will do exactly the same thing, but they'll work a little bit better with Twig so that we don't need to have the render function render them, which will be good. So we'll be getting rid of render, we'll be getting rid of theme functions, we'll be getting rid of process layer. There's a lot of debate about free process. I think we'll still keep it around. People like to use it.
Kill it.
I like it.
People like it. We'll talk about it more. None of this is set in stone. We just got things going this morning. But we want your input, so let us know what you think about that too. So, much fewer layers, which is great. So we're working on that too. So we're hoping that the sum of all of these fixes and the things that we're working on right now will make Drupal 8's theme layer consistent and easy for new people to learn. And that's all too.
So that looks pretty good, right? That's
Yeah.
All right, so we have to talk about what's left. We've got to finish converting all of the template files. Right now we've got most of the default template files, all the default template files converted, but anywhere a file's been overwritten, for example, in a theme or somewhere else, there's task files that need to be written. We need to get those done. We need to finish converting all of the theme functions as well. We're most of the way through those, but we've got a couple left.
Heide-Jã? Is that still there?
Kind of. We're going to use link with it, but we'll talk about that later. And then what we've also got to do is look at this massive list of templates we've now generated by converting all of this stuff in, pick out the ones that are the same, consolidate them, which we haven't started yet, but we have a game plan for doing that. And then we have to actually go back and take all those renderable arrays that we hid from the theme developer and turn them into a slightly smarter version of what they are.
Okay.
Yes.
Real quick about those two things.
Yes.
So for the consolidate similar templates and identify template suggestions, so accessibility, the whole getting rid of what's now, I don't know, 50 templates and 200 theme functions and turning that into a more manageable set. Not only is it just turning core into a more manageable set, but the other thing that that does is it changes the pattern of what contrib is expected to do. So right now, like, the reason there's so many in core is because there's like 80 modules in core. So you have something like book module. And so when book module needs to output a set of navigation links, right, that it invents a new theme function, theme book navigation. So it'll be nice to get rid of, to reduce that, but it also means that every other contrib module, if there's 15 other contrib modules that have to output their forms of navigation, they also invent theme functions for doing that stuff. So creating a contrib theme is really hard because, you have to think about, like, what are the other modules that can be introducing their own theme functions. For a theme to have control over all markup isn't just all markup that's in core, but like the 10,000 contrib modules that are each inventing their own theme functions as well. So that's why that's actually really important to do, is because once we establish if we can manage to successfully say, look, here's core, and none of the modules inside of core are inventing their own theme functions, we basically show contrib how to do the same thing, how to have contrib reuse, a manageable set of templates.
So if any of you have been following this issue, JC brought this up, I guess, about a year ago, where she envisioned what she called a component library, which is basically a set of templates that Drupal should provide that should get recycled everywhere. And so what we're going to be doing tomorrow is basically looking at all the template files we have now and trying to figure out how to turn that into this component library that not only all of core will use, but we could document somewhere and say, hey, contrib world, here are all of these standard pieces that you can use to put together in your own modules, and they'll be able to follow exactly not only the example of code we do in core, but also a really clear documentation page. It's like, here's these 8 things that you can use to create any page you can possibly imagine. And also with Twig, we can override them in different ways that we couldn't do before in core. So not only could you just override it in your theme, you can use, I guess we have a slide for this later. That's okay, we'll talk about it later. There's other cool stuff that we haven't implemented yet that is possible now that we have Twig.
And then on the convert renderable arrays into Twig objects, so back, we gave this session in DrupalCon Munich a couple months ago, and back then we thought that we were going to have to do that because we basically thought that Drupal's render arrays were just completely incompatible with Twig, and that we basically have no mechanism for actually getting Twig into core without converting all of our renderable arrays into objects, just because of an internal kind of detail around how Twig handles variables. However, since then, thanks to one contributor in particular, Fabian, and then other people have helped out, and yeah, if you're watching online, Fabian, basically figured out what Jen mentioned earlier. Twig is a very extensible system. It essentially works by compiling the really friendly syntax into PHP code, and the details of that compiler turns out to be very extensible, more extensible than we had realized. And so Fabian figured out how to basically just hook into Twig's compiler in such a way as to just make Twig work with our renderers exactly as they are. And that's why Twig got committed this morning to core. So we may still want to convert render arrays into objects or do other things there, though it's possible that maybe that's a Drupal 9 thing. Maybe that's not where we want to focus effort. We don't know.
It's more of a cleanup than it is a necessity.
It's not a necessity. It's a cleanup, and I would say the one above it, actually consolidating our templates and functions is like way more impactful than doing the other one.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a whole bunch more stuff that we will be doing, too. This is the kind of thing where we try something and we go, oh, hey, you know what else we can do? And then it ends up on our to-do list. So as we go, we find more. So there will be more after this. So.
It took us a long time to get to where we are now, and it's going to take time. There's definitely a lot of work to do, but we're going to work on some of that here at Badcamp. You guys can help.
All right, so how many of you have heard of or used Twig before now? Okay, so Twig has a bunch of really cool stuff built into it. I don't really know anything about Twig. I've had to learn everything specifically related to Drupal. So if you have Twig experience, it would be really valuable to have you at our thing tomorrow, so you can say, you know what else Twig can do, and we can try to figure out how to work that into our workflow too.
And not to forget the Drupal ladder thing that actually is looking for people who knows about Twig. So can we get the ladder ladies to do like this with their arms?
Drupal ladder.
So they're up there.
Drupal ladder.
So those of you who know
We're reading Twitter.
They kind of need help. I asked them before what they need. And what they need is actually people who knows about this trick thing. So you that knows about this thing to help out the beautiful narrators.
So there's one thing that Twig will let us do that is going to be really cool. You know how right now, if you have a node, and you have a node template that shows that node, and then you have an article that's a different, specific type, and your article needs to look a little bit different than your node. You've got to have a node template, and then you've got to have a node article template, and those two files contain almost exactly the same markup. And you want to change something on your article template, but everything else is the same. And then 6 months later, you want to make a change to all your templates. And now you've got to go, okay, well, I have a node template, a node article template, and maybe a node blog template, and a node event template. And you're like, oh, geez, did I miss one? Right? Because maybe you, I don't know, who knows where someone put it somewhere else or something, I don't know. So what Twig lets you do is have one template that can inherit from another. So you can have an article template that says, I'm exactly the same as that one, except for this thing is different. So you can start to have, so you can start to have not only a single source of all your original Drupal markup, which is all in the same place, but now in your own theme, you don't have to duplicate markup from template file to template file.
And that would be really useful for module development as well, because you want to use this sort of consolidated list of core Twig files, but you want to change that one thing. It would be possible for us to make it in such a way so that you could use that original Twig file, but just say, this is the one change I want to make.
Yeah. So
And there can be a lot of experimentation in the Twig around this. What's really cool about that feature is it's a Twig feature. So we don't have to do anything special in core to enable it. So core might not even take advantage of it at all. Maybe it will. We'll see.
we haven't figured out how yet. Which is why
If you have ideas on how core should, come to tomorrow. Here. But even if core doesn't take advantage of it at all, but suddenly contrib starts figuring out how to, and there could be a lot of innovation there, and then we can fold that into Drupal 9.
Another thing that's really cool is that, you know how in Drupal 7, if you're trying to see the value that you want to render, you do a DPM or a bar dump or something on this render array, and you get all of this stuff that you don't care about on the page. There's all these hash signs in there, and you're like, okay, what is this un thing, and how do I get to the thing I actually care about? Well, what we'll be able to do with Twig is ask it, hey, Twig, which variables can I print in this template file? And it can be here you go, here's the 4 things you actually care about. So you can have a really fancy inspector that'll let you see those things, and if those things have different levels, like a node might have a node ID and a node op or whatever, we could build an interface or something like that, where you could say, okay, show me this, and then drill into it. So we haven't built a fancy interface for anything like that now, but the inspector part is there. So there's an opportunity to make the process of getting information out of Twig much easier than it was before. So that could also be really cool.
I'm sure somebody's going to jump on that, and it's going to have to be a contrib module for Drupal-only, but somebody's going to jump in, and then we can make this really, really awesome and easy to figure out what's going on inside the Twig files.
Actually, there's another thing that we didn't put on this list, but because Twig is not PHP code and it is secure, we can edit it in a browser. So you know how with WordPress there's that thing where you can click edit and it'll show you your style sheet, and you can change your style sheet, and you can click save. Well, we can do that with our
Or if you ever use contemplate.
No, don't tell me.
No.
Strike that from the record.
Can we edit that out, because contemplate must not be mentioned.
Expression engine?
So yeah, if you've ever used an expression engine, there are a bunch of tools that designers generally love because they give you
They're
really
called
easy
themers
access.
and not designers.
Okay, well there's both, right?
Front-end people.
Front-end people.
So
I have
people
issues
who
with
aren't
this.
myself tend to really love these tools because you can just log into a page and click edit and then say change the theme, change the style, change the design, whatever you want. And they'll let you do it in the browser, and we can now save that in a way that's safe because it's linked. So that's not on here, but we'll add that for the next time, maybe if we don't forget again.
That's probably a contrib thing.
Right. It's not going to be in core, but it's definitely something cool that we can do now because we have Twig, which is great. We also think, we don't know for sure, that there's going to be huge performance gains from using Twig. The patch that we put in already is slightly slower than Drupal because it's got PHPTemplate going on, and Twig going on, and render arrays, and whatever else that Drupal does now, assembling 5,000 variables that never get printed. And we have the ability to go through this existing system and clean out all the crud that we put in there before, and then clean out and combine all these template files into a consistent, smaller pattern. And then Twig will be able to say, okay, well, I've got 6 template files that render 190 things on the page, but I don't have to render 190 or find out about 190 template files and only have to use those 6, and then spit out data from each of those 6 things a bunch of different times. And the more we can kind of clean up that system, it'll continue to get faster and faster. So of course we aren't going to know if it's actually faster or how much faster until we do it. But there's a huge potential there for cleaning things up, especially from how they are now. It's definitely going to get faster, but it might even end up faster than Drupal 7 is already. So that is really exciting.
Yeah. So like in the TPL files now, you have that big dot block at the top of the documentation that shows you all of the variables that are available. And Drupal spends time on every single one of those variables to create all of that content and all of that data. And oftentimes, the TPL file itself only uses like a third of those variables. And the rest of them are just there if you need them. But it still did all the work to generate it, and you're just not using it. So it's a wasted effort. And there's a potential, again, with the cleanup system to say, we'll make these variables available if you want them, but we're actually not going to spend any time building them until you tell us you want them.
So Twig is much better about like when you request something, it'll create, but not before then.
Yeah.
So the way Drupal does it now, it creates everything beforehand and then just like sticks them in.
Yeah, and it's because it's compiled, so like the Twig file actually becomes a PHP file sort of in the background. You never actually see the PHP file. And so the compiler knows, oh, look, they added a new variable. Now I have to go and generate and actually build that variable now. Whereas before, it was just like, theoretically, I could build this variable for you, but I'm not actually going to do it because it wasn't a Twig file.
So that could be huge. And then the last thing, this is something that we have theorized about a lot, like this week.
This week, since Munich.
Well, since Munich, but Sam has only really been involved since this week, right?
Sam?
Yeah.
No, Sam was not.
All right, well, you got really excited this week.
You got excited.
It took him 2.5 months to get excited about that. He was jumping up and down in Munich.
Anyway, okay, so
there was a night, beers, it happened in Munich, there was a lot going on. Yeah, we got really excited, and then...
I think that was the 6-hour conversation.
Hold on, okay.
What is it?
Up until
Tell us
now,
what it
Up
is.
until now, front-end developers have always had ultimate control over the code, right? And you can be like, check this variable, screw that, I'm just going to print it no matter what. And that means Drupal's user interface, it's like, would you like me to show you the logo? And people will be like, no, and then it's still there. And then they're like, I said no, and it's still there. And then they're like, but, and there's this weird disconnect between the user interface where Drupal's retaining information and the theme developer who's like, I don't care what Drupal says, I'm going to do what I want. But in Twig land, there's this possibility where Twig can say, hold on a minute, Morten has removed this variable from your template file, so I'm going to disable it in the user interface so that you don't think you're changing something that doesn't work. So we finally have this possibility for the interface to be aware of changes that go on in the code.
It's still working on the code name of unicorns, and it's not a code name in Munich because we could not speak about this openly because it was too dangerous. So
but anyway,
unicorns
what this means
We're not promising anything. Let's be clear.
Right now, the way that most people who are working with Drupal end up building designs is that they spend all this time working on this design and they get it done and they have all this code and they're like, okay, how do I make Drupal spit out this crap that, it was beautiful before Drupal spit it out, but then it turned into, anyway. So it takes a lot of time to make Drupal do that thing. But now we have this ability to be like, okay, I'm just going to write the code and put it into Drupal. And then Drupal will say, okay, hold on. There's this block in this region and this block in this region, and I'm just going to update your interface to say that that's where everything is. And that's a lot less administrative work to build it and then take the markup and then change the markup and then put it back. You just write the markup and then Drupal will build itself. Well, maybe not go that far. But
yeah, so there's this notion here that from a layout building perspective, we have an opportunity to actually make the canonical object that represents a layout actually be a Twig file. As I said before, we're not promising anything, and we're really late in the process now. So chances are this is something we're going to play with during, Drupal 8 and Encrypt. But there is a very real possibility that this sort of a thing can happen. And it also, going back to, the ability to extend those, and I was just thinking about this, there is a significant possibility that you could write the default layout and then extend it so that anytime you change the default, it updates any layout that extended it in the interface. So any blocks that you remove stay removed, but blocks you added or change the position of or things like that might be inheritable across layouts. And there's a lot of potential here, but we only have 4 weeks, so like I said, no promises.
Not in core. But yeah, a lot of awesome stuff. So, what do you think? You want to get involved? Alright, so all day tomorrow, starting at a reasonable hour in the morning, not too early, until 7.
There will be no sleeping at 7.
We have all the poly ballroom set up for sprinting, so if you want to find out about how to get more involved with Twig, talk to Morten. He's going to be rallying crews of people who are HTML experts to decide what we actually want our code to look like, what we want our template component library to look like, and how we can actually use more of the Twig stuff in what we're doing already. So, I know it's time for lunch.
We can take 1 minute of questions, but we started late, so we'll just stay here as long as you want. I've been told by this piece of paper that sandwiches and wraps are at the end of the hall. If you want a sandwich or a wrap. Question?
Will PHP templates still be based on Drupal-only?
Yeah.
The question is, will PHP templates still work with Drupal-only?
So the patch that was committed this morning did not remove it. If it remains, it'll be very different. So you can't take your Drupal 7 PHP template theme and drop it into Drupal-only and expect it to work. But it's only like 50 lines of code to actually have PHP template, and I think leaving it in code might be much easier than fighting the battle to actually.
Yeah, that's like, there's a group of people who really want to keep it as like the old theme engine, and then all of us who want the Twig engine are like, sure, whatever, fine.
Yeah.
So theme functions will still work too?
No, because they'll be removed.
So you can call a theme in PHP. You can call the function theme, right? And it'll go and find its Twig template and evaluate it because it'll still have 2 engines. But if you don't want to use Twig, then you can't. You're not going to get that template. So right now it's using both. So if you choose only one, then
And you can use Drupal 7 until Drupal 9 comes out. You know, you got yours. Drupal 7. Questions?
Yeah, it's both JavaScript and CSS files. We have asset development and asset integration.
Sorry, did you say it was in core?
Yeah, it's in core. I thought just like yesterday, it's in core.
Okay.
So, would it be possible to add all the JavaScript and CSS files from the template?
The question is, now that we have aesthetic and core, is it possible to add all the JavaScript and CSS files via the template system? Maybe, I don't know if that's a good idea because sometimes JavaScript and CSS is not dependent on the theme, it's dependent on modules. Like modules actually need that to work, and so it comes from a module. There's some discussion about that right now. I'm not, does anybody else have things to say about that?
To be determined.
To TBD.
Because we need to speed up the API.
There's a lot to be done in Drupal-only. I mean, right now we're just trying to get the features in and pull the screen. So if you want this, we'll figure it out later. Yeah.
We definitely have opinions on them, we just don't know what they are yet.
There's also a question of with caching. How do we, if the block is cached and it implements JavaScript that is contingent upon something that is not cached, how does that work?
Yeah, that's not your problem.
That's not my problem. It's not our problem. Other people are figuring that out right now. It's our problem to solve.
And I'm trying to comment on Sam and Larry. So.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Push it off.
Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, if I'm writing a module and I go to the trouble to return a render array, it sounds like the intent is to create that render array will output more or less what I expected. Is that?
This is also something we haven't figured out
The
yet.
question is, make sure I understand the question. The question is, I'm writing a module, I go to the trouble of building this render array. Is that going to change that from my module in Drupal 7?
And hash, the information embedded in that render array, is that going to be interpreted by the Twig?
So we don't know yet. Right now, the render array that you've already written in Drupal 7 will work exactly the same way. It might stay that way, that we end up leaving that kind of thing in. What we have on our agenda is to go through and one by one replace all of the render arrays in core. And we won't really know what that actually means until we try it. And we'll probably try like 3 of them and be like, this is a horrible idea. But who knows, maybe we'll come up with some system that's like, oh, here's a really easy way to convert from one to the other or whatever. We don't know yet. We haven't tried it at all. So it could be that you do something similar but different. It could be that you do something exactly the same.
The thing is that the render API system came from Form API. And we're not changing Form API in Drupal-only. So there's going to be that system, of course. I think even if we move render arrays, the idea of renderable elements as variables is still going to be there.
Yeah, we do the line of forms.
Sure.
Everybody loves forms as renderables. They love forms as renderables in Drupal 6. We're not touching forms. That's
Was
like
the concept of the page alter, is that?
page alter.
Or it's going. Not going.
Yeah,
Then we're going to
that's-
patch.
It would be really awesome if it were gone, because that would make fun of my test.
Not yet.
Sir.
Sort of coming on with the form-related question, there's, especially when overriding forms and trying to customize how a particular form's HTML turns out, it feels like it's really one of the messiest places where the theme system, the form system overrides. Is that just something that's completely being worked on? Like say, turning a form into a table. Like, that's its own special kind of
We haven't thought about it yet. We have looked at like all of the crap that comes out of those theme functions that generate all of your form tags and your form element tags, but we haven't actually looked at how they get put together via the form API. There's definitely room for improvement, but we haven't thought about it yet.
And I mean, I don't think hash theme is going away from Form API, right?
Yeah.
We'll still be able to define a theme function that you can use, right?
Well, I mean, I'm not necessarily a fan of that.
Okay. If you have an idea, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I have no ideas.
Oh.
I'm just thrilled that you guys came up with that way.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe
Well,
tomorrow.
so that begs the question: can I do form dot whatever and
Yes.
print out a form element?
Eventually, you will be able to.
Okay, no, I mean,
That's
moving
all.
towards that future sounds deliriously nice.
Yes. All right. Anyone else?
So do you still create theming functions with like a hook theme like you did in 8.7?
So there aren't any theming functions anymore.
Yeah.
You will create a theme hook the same way you did.
Ah,
and
that's
you'll
what I was
define a template file and the variables to go into it in the
Yeah.
same way that you did.
But if you're writing a module, please think hard before implementing the theme.
Yeah, you
Right?
probably don't need to.
Because if this whole, like, part of the goal of consolidating to smaller theme functions is, like right now, what I was saying earlier is every contrib module invents its own theme function.
Right.
Because that's the pattern you set up.
Right.
But the goal with the whole theme component library that hopefully we'll make some progress on tomorrow with all of you is like instead of having book module, implement book navigation.
Right. More generic sort
More
of.
generic stuff. So the hope is that like 95% of modules won't actually need to invent their own theme functions. They can just build up renderables that reuse the right components that Crawler ships with. If you're doing something really crazy and want your own custom theme function because you're outputting HTML that doesn't fit the pattern of anything else, it's there for you. You can do it, but we're hopefully going to change the culture to just not be inventing theme functions. But you can still invent, theme suggestions like I'm saying. So the book module will still do things like, this is an item list with a suggestion of book navigation. So if you want to override it specifically for book, you can, but you don't have to.
I mean, part of, I feel like extensibility is kind of baked into Drupal culture. It's like, we are very much fans of if I want to change that thing down there, I can do it. And so there is, Jen and I had this long conversation yesterday about pre-process and how that's going to change and all this other, if it changes and all this other stuff. And there was this part of me that was palpable of there's this fear of let's not take tools away. We're not going to take tools away. We want to consolidate, we want to make things simpler. But, if you need to do X, if you need to do something very specific, you will be able to do that.
Drupal 7 gave us this amazing amount of control. And we want to make sure that whatever we do in Drupal 8 lets you do everything we're still able to do. We're not going to regress back to I can't put this thing where I want it. So we're going to try and give you all the tools you need to build exactly what you need. We just have to find a way to do it in a way that makes more sense.
Will it make designers be less anal about pixel perfect designs?
No.
different talk.
It's not a thing.
But pre-process, I just want to know what will the table template look like. because it has a lot of preprocess to fill in the code span, row span,
So
and the
the
responsive
table
stuff.
template got rewritten like 2 weeks ago, and at that point we hadn't merged with head. And so we have 2 versions of the table template in Twig right now, the like before we merged with head and after we merged with head thing, which only got fixed on Monday, or we only merged with head on the 1st. And so that new thing hasn't been implemented. So all of our tables in our like Twig sandbox probably aren't working right now. But we have it.
Is it like in the preprocess or is it
So
a template file?
this is also something else we haven't quite figured out. Like how much do we do in pre-process and how much do we leave to the template file? Because a lot of the stuff you can do in Twig. And where it is right now is that we want the template file to make as much sense as possible. So if we need to like organize like variables into structures that we can then like print header, right? Header I think is too much information to be printed in a template file. You want to have the actual tags that are in your header and print the cells. And so there's like a loop in there where you can say like this is a loop and then it prints the cell and it's got the header tag around it. So this is also up for debate. We've got a couple of examples that are like neat feature. So if you have some opinions on how much should be pre-processed and turned into variables and how much we should leave in there, that's fine.
It's more like the fact that the same function is that complicated. I mean, we can't get rid of preprocess because of that.
Yeah, we're not
getting rid of pre-process.
So, yeah.
It may be called
We'll see.
It may be called
We're
something
getting
different.
rid of process.
Yeah.
We're getting rid of process, not pre-process. It may be called something else, but I'm with you.
If someone wants to sit down and convince me, you feel free, but I have yet to be convinced.
So here's the thing, like the way pre-process works, if you think about it as an order of execution, right? Like pre-process happens before the template file gets variables inserted into it. With Twig, we don't have to separate those 2 steps. What we can do is say, take all this junk and then go turn it into stuff that fits into a template. And so it's kind of a like wild processing rather than a pre-process.
I just,
We're going to have all the same tools are going to be there. Right now, they're not any different than they are, but just saying there is a potential for cleanup here. Or we might not need to have a whole separate period of time that's like, hey, we're going to do all this stuff that all these ones couldn't do before that the team can't do later because we can do it later.
I think the issue with this whole thing is like pre-process has become like grammatically it means kind of 2 different things. Like we don't want this like separate phase of like where all this stuff is being done that doesn't need to be done. But to me, as a themer, pre-process means I have control of what the variables are in the template conceptually. So there's the conceptual notion of what pre-process is in Drupal 6 and Drupal 7.
And that's staying.
And that's staying. Conceptually, that idea of like, I need to be able to get in and do whatever I need to. Conceptually, that's staying. Pre-process meaning like something that happens before something else. You know, if you take the literal definition, that literal definition could be different. But the concept is staying. And I think this was the big dilemma that we had yesterday. It was like, I need pre-process. What I was actually trying to say is, I need the ability to get in and change variables because I may have a really complicated table or really complicated other type of markup that I can only do it in PHP, and I want to write PHP.
Yeah, and understand, I don't disagree with that sentiment. The question is where it happens and how.
Exactly.
Right? And I really loathe pre-process functions with the entirety of my being. So if I can kill them, I will. You be assured of it.
Fortunately, he's really busy.
Fortunately, I'm very busy, so you may have a version before I get around to it, but I'm putting all the tools in place to move that logic somewhere smarter.
Right, exactly. So it's not the concept we disagree with, it's the implementation.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, anyone else? Sandwiches. Thank you for coming. If you don't know what pre-processing is, I'm actually going to talk on pre-processing later this afternoon.
And I just want to clarify, you call Jeff Eaton sir.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to do is like sections that everything you need to know about the theme layer, so kind of cuts like particular topics. Like if I can go basics of pre-processing, here's a little more good one. So you're like comment 3. Yes.
So we actually need more in ones, but more distinctions between. So like, so in the case of something like address fields, you have your state and stuff like that. And we actually need to benefit them around
there's like one slide that's really good, the second is
so I have a deal.
oh yeah, that's
Field values, we also need to have So then each in an address field, like the city would be its own template. So it would be it would be like 10 different attributes or attributes for each one for each topic. Okay. So it needs to be separate. There's like a wrapper type or entire there would have to be a span around
Did you see that?
She's got the original one. This is slightly pink because I got the orange. But as I was going through the
exactly the property. So it would be like okay, I'm going to tell my friend
John, is this your power cord?
That's Morten's.
Okay. Well, is this your power cord?
Like a nested
Hey. Thanks for watching the Lampton. I was, it was good. Yeah?
I think we technically got there because one of the questions.
Oh, yeah.
And so in the case of the alter,
they didn't subtract the entries at one point, being a coordinator from her team score, and then drop them into third.
It was only winning by like half a point.
Yeah, they were winning by half a point. But they didn't subtract the 1.3 based on the team being a coordinator.
Why is it your handicap?
It's the first local language ever adopted in Drupal.
By that?
We actually looked at YouTube.
How many times did you change how we write? And we did this with ISO, and now we're doing we're changing it all.
It's very funny. Back in the edge, like, you guys realized that you didn't have any prizes for like, it's like, we don't have any prizes, so congratulations. That was just the end.
We also got like chase them to
I bet.
started really late.
Right.
It was pretty funny. I was pretty sure nobody thought about prizes.
No, we did. We did actually talk about it when we were planning, but we
Yeah, I think there is a bit of a noise, and I think it's changing.
There was, for a couple of years ago, it was definitely way more interesting, we just,
that sounds awesome.
I had a late record, so I might nibble on something. Seems pretty successful. I think their new revision is pretty good.
This is like dinner conversations.
Yeah, I like the,
my brother is a software developer, and
here's
he
all the problems.
does the front end.
Fix all of that.
Yeah, we made that.
If you're going to start it, I started building my own CMS. I was really concerned about him. Because the house is markup behind. And then I realized I keep rebuilding. I thought I had an extensible system, but actually it's not. I have to rebuild this damn thing from start over and over again. And then I discovered Drupal 1.7. It's like, oh, you know, they built an extensible system. But then I look at the markup and I think, and there's 126 CSS files. You know, that's where I do the and I think, I hope nobody who knows anything about this ever looks at the view source.
Maybe this is how long can that take? That's a little bit overseas.
Well, I'm relatively new to Drupal. That doesn't surprise me because, like, as I got into it, I was like, this is the code is a mess, and as I talked to people, it was kind of like, oh, but there's nothing you can do about it. That's just your, like, just pure, like, so it's really
You need to know the right people. You need to talk to the right people
But Drupal is, I think like when I first got into Drupal, people would say, somebody would say, but you know, this page, there's no canonical URL. You can access it with a Q, question mark Q equals, with a, a friendly URL. And people think, well, so what's the problem? The server can figure it out. It's like, right, but the search engines can't figure it out, And there's this kind of this attitude, like, well, as long as the user can type a URL and it shows up on the page, does it matter if there's 7 that get you to the same page? And that's completely gone from Drupal. Now it's like nobody even talks about it. And I think that
I'm pretty sure about it here we would here after the comes out of all the things. I think we have to have a whole nother. It's also about respect from the developer community that needs to understand. We actually have people who cares about this stuff, who knows about this stuff, and makes it work. Because when I've been talking a lot about this stuff. It's like, why should anybody stop you? Like, but we could not get in and get this stuff to work. I mean, just
we don't. If
you don't have
a
to
front
choose it.
ender, it's a little bit. The amount of code you need to know.
Yeah, and then you go into the issue queue where there's evil men sitting waiting just to attack you or anything because it's an issue queue, and that's the next problem, and that's just kind of how it is. I mean,
I like to think it's changing.
When are you going to be online?
It is. I can more or less. Well, 3 years ago in DC, we closed the doors to with about 100, 200 days. And we basically remote. There was a lot of anger in that room.
Yeah.
And from then on, I've kind of figured out that it was not about discussing code with developers. It was about getting people involved.
Right.
That was the whole thing, getting more and more front-end people in, getting this attitude towards the front-end just being like a dumping ground for bullshit.
Yeah.
And making it actually, this is a discipline, this is happening. And when the whole mobile thing came in, and people actually figured out, holy crap, we need to.
Yeah.
Responsive is not a magic art form. It's pretty fucking simple. If your markup is simple, then you can make it. It's so fucking easy.
Exactly. It's not.
With Google's bullshit, it's like, holy shit. We need to choose this. And those kind of things, like, now we need to be mobile. I thought, whatever. But mobile means going up, beginning to look at the markup to change that stuff. Good. And
That's what's right.
this trick thing is the reason that developers want to have it is because of security. And like, okay, you can get all the security you want. Oh, we have to target to template. Could be. I mean, it's just it just seems to be falling into place.
Yeah.
And there's enough of us in the front end.
Yeah.
So we need to discuss it. And this is very much about the discussion, getting people into actually being issues.
Yeah.
And just like going into, hey, this is actually really important. I mean, we already had one of the see one of, hey, can I just get a layout file? And it started out being like, usual people get help and shit on the class. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute, guys. Could we just make this simple like one grammar class on it, get it done, and then we can like begin to fill it right? Remove the clear place because maybe it's we don't support the same anymore. I mean, I mean, it's out of reach. Yeah. We don't need that stuff anymore. We can use other techniques. Somebody needs to go in and tell the developers, hey, this is what we need.
Right.
And if nobody tells them what to do, I mean, I understand why I was not done.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to be the only one telling them what to do.
No.
I kind of want to have more people so we don't make too many fails.
I'm glad to see things moving this way. I mean, it's nice to have these groups now. I mean, I'm part of a group, a UX group, that get together, and it's great. Like now you have a bunch of front-enders who are nitpicking about like, oh, should this operate this way, or should it look this way, or is it clear? And that's the kind of thing that I don't remember people doing a few years ago. So.
No, they did not. It was literally, I think, the first conference I went to in 2006, I was the only one that used Photoshop or anything else than just copying an image.
Wow.
I was like, okay, now I know what Google looks like shit. I mean, and that was kind of the way, like here, just take this and make it pretty. Like, we don't prettify anything. Prettifying is not how you do design. That's not how you implement design. It's an art form that takes years to learn. And that change, that taken a long time. But it is. I mean, it would be so easy if you were also a commercial product. Then you could just like, hey, get this done. This is also about getting every fucking developer in the room to accept that this is
this is important.
Yeah. I mean, the UX thing, I'm talking with
so what I want to see is kind of a left hand side.
From what Schofield was one of the very similar. Yeah, he's a Dutch guy.
The phases or something.
No, that was Boyan.
Oh, that's Boyan.
But those are both both of them are Dutch. And I actually met them up down at the which is a 2-inch funded function and everything. And we're kind of joking back and forth about the issues. You know that you don't even want to see the UX issues with the amount of, I mean, just getting it accepted as this is important has taken years.
Really?
Yeah, because it's not important to the chicks and the guys of the world. But they, as you said, with your brother who's software engineer, it's look how fast my data looks.
Right.
That's the important thing. That is how this shit works. And the rest of us feel like, but it looks like shit. And if you say that out loud, they feel like it's their code that is not working. And then
I thought that was a really good insight. That, you know, they're looking at, they're thinking, they're probably visualizing their code.
They don't. I mean, and it's the first time we had to talk about design. I had a talk about design. There was a point of view before we were talking about database design.
Oh my god.
Exactly.
Really?
We're not even talking about. I had a session at we had the Google development day, which is like a straight up only developers.
Yeah.
And it's hardcore and they nerd the fuck out of it. And I had a session that was called Developer versus Designer, the epic story, which was basically trying to put these things into perspective.
Yeah.
Trying to say, when we say this, what you mean is that it's like we're trying to speak. We have just as much passion in both parts, and we kind of fight for domination of this the website. And it can take some of it is just so funny. If we could go step back and accept what we did, then we could make something really awesome.
It's not a zero-sum thing. I mean,
it's not like rocket. Yeah, it's not like rocket science. Like, hey, I'm good at making CSS and markup. Hey, how about you young friends take care of that? We are good at making database structure stuff, thingy, whatever. But whatever it is they do in their brain boxes. Yeah.
All right, well, I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Sweet.
I was promised by not only Don,
Yeah.
he said that if you go to the morning sessions, you're going to get a picture, you're going to slide a picture of King Mom's.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not going to read the last couple of times. Yeah, he's been in there many times.
He said, you tell him this, and yeah.
Good Democrat.
Great. Thank you very much. lose your history.
Just to, I mean, in the sense that if you type in a bunch of stuff,
You want to wipe it
every
all
day
out.
you can hit up to go to previous commands, but you know how to just
Control W, I think. Control U or Control W or Control C. Yeah, but that would cancel the doing still. Does either of those work?
No, Control W closes the window.
That's right. Sorry, I don't know.
No worries.
Used to.
I don't feel so bad now.
I used to. Find it?
Yeah, this is figuring why it's in the function wasn't running. Is it very basic?
do I have to be on? Oh, really?
Preparing us up.
We can go across the hall.
It's both of these we have to be out of.
I'm sorry?
We have to be out of both of these. There's other rooms in the building, but the two big ones are. Thank you. You know that we have to be out of here? There's some student training sessions in here. First of all, we have to be because we have some.
Thanks again with that.
Oh, yeah.
But if you have some, it would probably be good. What's the session? You think? Okay. What's your session?
Okay, well, in the meantime, I'll calculate.
And do, oh, we have stuff. Is that?
Yeah, that's our recording equipment. I'll probably be up by the registration booth.
Hold on a second. Jen? I'm looking for Jen at the top.
Oh, and
Who was that? Hi, Lisa. David has a 2-part session, panels for papers, and he's wondering where he's supposed to be because he was set up in 155.
Oh, is this 155?
What?
This is 155? Yeah. I might have been in the wrong room then.
Oh, okay.
That was probably my fault.
let me get back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bump this down, I know.
Sorry, I thought this was room 160.
Okay.
So that is completely my fault. I don't know about the recording equipment though.
Okay, we have an update. David says he thought he was supposed to be in 160, not 155. However, we do have recording equipment in 155.
I'm leaving it set up.
Mark, do you copy?
Yep, I'm here.
Can you just do a double check of data trim at 160?
Yeah, I'm going to bring it up.
It's 160 this way? Yeah.
Hey, you guys doing like 3-4 kitchen shirts?
I don't know. We might be able to get you one though.
So like,
Sure. Are you interested in
This one here, okay. Hey, how's it going? Good.
So there's one here, but I totally just dropped it before and stuff came unplugged. So I did plug me back in and it popped up on the screen, but
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
What room I'm going to.
I bet you're busy.
Yeah, a little bit. I just feel like I just unhooked this to bring it somewhere, and I don't see the room I need to bring it to.
Is that the one that came for 155?
Yeah. It's alright. It's easier than hooking it back up somewhere.
Sure.
I'll throw it at the chapter 3 table.
Thanks for your help.
Yep.
I might do that.
Realize.